Okay, guys, this is it's going to be a longish video, which means nobody's going to watch it. So, there we go. If you do happen to watch it and you think that this material is useful, I'd appreciate it if you give me one of those on YouTube, because it tells me that you would like me to do more of them. And if I don't see that, then I won't do any more. So this is a junior cycle language analysis task. We can expect there to be language analysis tasks on every junior cycle paper. Part of English is your ability, part of what you're being examined on in English is your ability to demonstrate the understanding of how language is used effectively. And this is a really good example. Here's the question, it was worth 15 marks. So it says, just get this going here now. The extract from The Reason I Jump, I'll show you the passage in a second, uses imagery and language very effectively. Identify one example of the effective use of both imagery and language in the extract and describe how each example adds to your enjoyment. Now, one thing that's really notable is the fact that it says one example. Sorry, no. It says one example for 15 marks. But it's one example of each of the effective use of both imagery and language. Now, this goes to the point that I've made many times before about the junior cycle, that the idea that you have to write a paragraph for every 15 marks, for every 5 marks, is wrong. Often questions are very straightforward and it would be wise to write a longer answer, but often the questions are just very specific and there's no need to write 3 paragraphs here. 2 is what's required, but the 2 have to be of good quality. And the fact is that the vast majority of students do not get or do not think about how language is used, and therefore they're limited in their ability to respond to these questions. So this video is done in response to a class that I did. So those of you who are in the class will recognize the page. I like going through mock papers. I think they're always very well put together, and a credit to the people who designed them. And also there's loads of really, really interesting tasks on them. This was from a memoir called The Reason I Jump by a young man called, you can see his name there, I think it's pronounced Naoki Higashida, and he is severely autistic. And he wrote this book in order to explain why he behaves the way he behaves, or to try to articulate for those people who aren't familiar with the impact of autism and how and why certain behaviors manifest themselves. It was a really good passage. And as you can see, I went through it and I come up with loads of different aspects that you could talk about in terms of language and imagery. And we talked about the difference between those two words. Of course, imagery occurs as a result of the writer's use of language. So when a writer uses a simile, that can create an image. When a writer uses a metaphor, that can create an image. But also language can be used in ways other than to create imagery. So as I said, rhetorical questions or repetition, buzzwords, these are aspects of language that are interesting and aren't related to imagery. So what I said I would do when I set this as a homework exercise, I said I would record myself writing some rice paragraphs in response to that task. And don't forget, when I say rice paragraphs, I mean paragraphs which are built around a relevant point, informed by evidence and, in this case, quotation from the passage, written in language which is as clear as possible, and paragraphs in which the point and the evidence and their relationship to each other is explained. Remember, your ability to explain is limited by time constraints in the junior cycle. You've got approximately, remember I've told you this, and it's a rule of thumb, you've got approximately 3 minutes for every 5 marks available. And that means that for this question, you've got about 9 minutes. Now, I don't think 9 minutes is that long a time to read the passage and write the two paragraphs unless you're really well prepared. So this was a really good example of the type of question that was set in order to separate out the candidate who's going to have a chance of getting those higher merit or distinction grades from everybody else. So yeah, challenging, no doubt about it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you some examples of how you could have gone about answering the question. And remember, these are just ideas. If you don't agree with me, grand, at least I'll have made you think. So the first quote that I took from the passage is, this is the first part of the passage. What do you think I'm feeling when I'm jumping up and down, clapping my hands? I bet you think I'm not really feeling anything much beyond the manic glee all over my face. Now, the point there is that the writer has constructed an engaging opening. All writing needs to be engaging at the start. All writers need to grab the attention of the reader and draw them in and encourage them to continue reading. Otherwise, what's the point? Otherwise, you're writing and nobody's reading your stuff. So the engaging opening, that's a part of language. But for just to say, I really like this passage, see, adds your enjoyment because it has an engaging opening, that's not good enough. What we need is explanation as to why. So I'm going to show you an example here. So I start off with my topic sentence. Oh, I'm on caps lock. So I've got a good topic sentence there. Okay. A good topic sentence which has a very clear identity. It tells me what the paragraph is going to be about. And I've got the adds to my enjoyment part because it says interesting and thought provoking. And the question is asking about your enjoyment of the text. And if you found it interesting and thought provoking, then clearly you're enjoying it. So then we have the quote. And I always think it's a good idea to try to employ the surname of the author in your analysis. So this author is called Naoki Higashida. So you could write the author or the writer or Higashida. And then you integrate your quote. Higashida writes, what do you think I'm feeling when I'm jumping up and down, clapping my hands? I bet you think I'm not really feeling anything much beyond the manic glee all over my face. And what you've got there is a really engaging opening, but why? Now, that paragraph is, of course, a good bit longer than a paragraph that most of you will write, but it's a really excellent paragraph, if I say so myself. You've got the the constituent parts of a good paragraph. I really admire the writer's ability to create an engaging opening. So that's what the paragraph is about. It's question facing. The first two sentences are thought provoking and interesting. There's again your reference to the enjoy part. Higashida is the writer's name, and then you incorporate the quote, which is really, really important skill. Higashida writes, "What do you think I'm feeling when I'm jumping up and down, clapping my hands? I bet you think I'm not really feeling anything much beyond the manic glee all over my face." And what most students will then write is, "I like this and get opening. It's engaging and it added to my enjoyment. And this is why I like the writer's language." And you're going, well, that doesn't really say anything. So the writer's ability here to dig down into technique is what's really impressive. This opening is engaging for a number of reasons. The writer uses a rhetorical question. In order to grab the reader's attention. He also makes the tone very personal by using the you personal pronoun. All of these things combining to make the piece interesting. This has the effect of making the reader feel as if they're being directly addressed. Finally, the writer's use of onomatopoeia, clapping, and the noun-adjective combination of manic glee. Sorry, no. Create imagery. All of this combines to make me enjoy the skill the writer displayed in the opening sentences of the passage. So I think that's really good. It's really long though. You might be watching this going, what the hell, Paul? That's more like a Leaving Cert standard answer. And it is. So if this candidate had just said engaging opening, put the quote in, and mentioned the rhetorical question down as far as there, you would have gotten your marks. What I'm trying to show you here is that there's just so much to say. So much to say if you know what you're looking for. The top end students, well, the top end, any junior cycle higher level student should know what a rhetorical question is and understand why they're used and the effect of them. Any top end or decent junior cycle English student should understand the impact of adjective noun combinations, should be able to identify onomatopoeia, and should understand why writers use the direct personal pronoun you when addressing a reader. So these are all really good signs of somebody who's actually done the study. And that's why the question was asked. So if you think that was really, really bad and really, really boring, you're probably not watching, that's fine. No problem. But I want to show you another example. I said I was going to do 7. I'm actually going to do 5. I'll do the rest of them really quickly. Have a look at this example and ask yourself, does this contain anything in terms of language or imagery that's interesting? When I'm jumping, he says that part of his autism, he expresses himself by jumping. I can feel my body parts really well too, my bounding legs and my clapping hands, and that makes me feel so, so good. Okay, so here we go. You ready? So here's your topic sentence. So honesty, the determination to be honest is a part of the, is a part of a writer's style. So now we're going to drill down into how that relates to language. And now here I am again, bringing in my quote. So now we have, I also really enjoyed, so we're on enjoyed, okay? the very honest way the writer addresses the situation. A great example of this occurs when he states, when I am jumping, I can feel my body parts really well too, my bounding legs and my clapping hands, and that makes me feel so, so good. Now, where's the style? What can you say about the language there? So here we go. Now, I think that's a good paragraph. Again, the student knows what they're doing. They're confident. They can do it really quickly because they've done the study. They understand language. I also really enjoyed a very honest way the writer addresses the situation. A great example of this occurs when he states, there's a quote, when I'm jumping, I can feel my body parts really well. My bounding legs and my clapping hands. I could have mentioned the adjective noun combinations there again. I didn't bother. And that makes me feel so, so good. It is the use of, and that's the language technique there, of repetition in so, so good that really struck me. So if it struck me, that's your personal response. The writer uses this technique to emphasize his point. So this student knows that that's what repetition does in that particular case. In most cases, repetition is used to stress, to underline, to emphasize a point. So really good use of language. And that made the passage feel really honest, back to your original point, and therefore compelling to read. And if you found it compelling to read, well, then you enjoyed it. Not bad. Again, you might be thinking, God, Jesus Christ, Paul, it's too hard. How about this? Everybody knows what a simile is, right? There's a number of them in this passage, but one of the best ones is, he says, my body seizes up. Just gonna put that in bold. Yeah, there we go. My body seizes up as if it were struck by lightning. So that's a brilliant simile. Very direct, very easy to understand. My body seizes up as if it were struck by lightning. So what you got to do now is integrate that quote into your sentence and then put a little bit of an explanation. So again, use the same phrasing. A great example, of course. And say you've already said a great example in the previous paragraph and you want to vary your vocabulary because you're really pitching high. And sometimes I really like it when students go to the passage and they identify where their quote comes from. So see the way this third is there? It's at the end of the third paragraph. Okay, so now I've integrated my quote into my sentence. I admire the author's use of simile. There's a notable instance, so that means example, so you're trying to vary vocabulary, in the third paragraph when he says, my body seizes up as if it were struck by lightning. Now all you have to do is explain that very briefly. I think that's decent. I'm just improvising. You can tell me it's shit if you want to. Again, I'm trying to follow my Rice rules. I've got a topic sentence which is relevant. I admire the writer's use of simile. That's part of use of language. There's a notable instance in the third paragraph when he says, "My body seizes up as if it were struck by lightning." So there's a really, really good example. You've integrated it. This simile works because it makes a complex point easy to understand for the reader, right? You could also add in, if you wanted to add in there, while at the same time creating a vivid image. Being struck by lightning is an intense experience. So the comparison, and that's what a simile is, isn't it? It's a comparison. Really helps the reader gain an insight into the reality of the writer's experiences. And you can see the stages of the paragraph. There's stage one, there's stage two, and there's stage three. Stage one is your relevant topic sentence. Stage two is the information, so or I. Everything is written in nice, clear language. That's C. And then stage three is the explanation. Those are the Rice rules. I often think that PEQ neglects the importance of writing with clarity. You know, make a point, explain the point, back it up with a quote. But what about the phrasing? What about the way you write? You have to make sure you write with the greatest clarity that you possibly can. Example number 4 for nobody who's watching. Hooray. This is a long quote. You would never use a quote this long. Let's have a look at it. So by jumping up and down, it's as if I'm shaking loose the ropes that are tying up my body. When I jump, I feel lighter, and I think the reason my body is drawn skywards is that the motion makes me want to change into a bird and fly off to some faraway place. Now, do you see how there's another simile there? It's as if I'm shaking loose the ropes. Do you see how, again, his honesty is there? He's saying, I want to change into a bird and fly off to some faraway place. And you see how personalized this is. So there's loads to say there, but here's what I'm going to say. Now, again, just to show you, I'm going to tell you how simple this is. So this is from the fourth paragraph. Okay. The fourth paragraph contains two very powerful images. Just watch what I do here. Sorry, no. No. So I'm going to get rid of all of this. So watch, I'm going to get rid of all of this. Don't need the big quote. Often it's just filling up ink. Or sorry, filling up lines on the page with wasted ink. So my paragraph reads, the fourth paragraph contains two very powerful images. Higashida compares the limitations of his condition to being tied up by ropes. He then juxtaposes that with the idea of changing into a bird and flying off to some faraway place. So you see the way I've split the quote up. I've split the quote up into different bits that work for me. So now I've used the term juxtaposition or juxtaposes, which means, as I'm sure you know, to create a very stark contrast. So there's a contrast between being tied up by ropes and then flying free. And that's exactly what I'm going to explain here. This is all analytical thinking. This is the kind of stuff that almost nobody is able to do. I don't know why. Well, I think it's mainly because I think it's 50% students have no interest whatsoever in learning this stuff. But I think the other reason is because it's hard. Maybe that's the case. But again, it's a really good paragraph. Probably a bit long. I'm trying to pitch this at top end. So again, the fourth paragraph contains two very, very powerful images. Higashida compares the limitations of his condition to being tied up by ropes. He then juxtaposes that with the idea of changing into a bird and flying off to some faraway place. So again, look, I've got my topic sentence. Then I've got my evidence, my information, and now I've got my explanation. Those are the three bits. Combine that with always being very careful with the way you write, not overly complicating your phrasing, keeping everything nice and clean and clear, punctuated properly. That's golden. This contrast is powerful. The reference, and if you're saying it's powerful, that means you've enjoyed it. You don't have to keep on saying, and I enjoyed it because it's clear from that you are enjoying it. The reference to ropes is an effective image. There you go, effective image. Those exact words are in the question. You don't have to always use the same words that are in the question. You just have to try to be on task as often as possible. Because, sorry, misspelled because. It is an accessible image that explains his frustration. So you're able to articulate your reasons why. By then referring to the freedom of being like a bird and taking off in flight, the writer conveys, again, great use of vocabulary for a junior cycle or even a Leaving Cert student. The release, it should be, misspell, reread your work, and always, you won't spot all the mistakes. I was even looking at the Grinds 360 junior cycle book the other day, and I was looking at answers and I saw mistakes because they're all done like this. This is the way I do answers, trying to show you how to do them. They're all done like on the spur of the moment, and sometimes you do miss mistakes when you reread. So what? It shouldn't stop you trying and practicing. It doesn't stop me having a go. The writer conveys the release he feels, and we have a better understanding of why he jumps. Now, if you want to add in, and this is why I enjoy the passage, you can, but I think that's already there. And then finally, example number 5 is all we can do is tweet, flap our wings around in a cage. If only I could just flap my wings and soar away into the big blue yonder and the hills far, far away. Brilliant example of writing, excuse me. Again, we're not going to use the whole thing, but we're going to say, so the best image in the passage occurs in the final paragraph when the writer employs a clear metaphor. Okay, there's your topic sentence. Now you've got to give the metaphor. Okay, I'm going to get rid of some of this. I suppose I don't need to. So I'll get rid of all of this here. Okay, I'll get rid of all that. And just keep the quotes short. Don't have to be long quotes. Continuing the bird image, he says, all we can do is tweet, flap our wings, and hop around in a cage. Now, I like that. And the metaphor is, I know I'm ending my sentence on from there and I shouldn't, but anyway, I'm going to break a rule. I'm going to use a big word here. So I think they're all distinction level responses. Now don't forget, you want to be writing 2 paragraphs. You're not going to be writing with the kind of length that I'm writing. I'm typing, obviously. But you can see how quickly I'm getting those paragraphs done because I know what I'm looking for. I know how to explain a metaphor. I know how to explain a simile. I know how to explain, rhetorical questions because I've done the work. Let's have a look at the last one. The best image in the passage occurs in the final paragraph when the writer employs a clear metaphor. Now again, what have we got there? We've got another very, very, very clear topic sentence. I know what every paragraph should have a distinct identity. Look, being very boring now. First one is engaging opening. Second one is honesty. Sorry, never put that in bold. There's honesty and repetition. Third one is simile. Fourth one is juxtaposition and imagery, just imagery. And last one is metaphor. So each one of those paragraphs has its own identity. And then each one of those paragraphs, when you make the point, stating whatever it's about, then you add a quote, and then you explain why the quote is an example of good writing, and bring it back to whether it's effective. I think it works really well. The best image of the passage occurs in the final paragraph when the writer employs a clear metaphor. Continuing the bird image, he says, all we can do is tweet, tweet, flap our wings, and hop around in a cage. The metaphor is the reference to a cage. What is a cage? Again, I'm using a rhetorical question there in my writing. It is something that limits freedom. It is something we want to escape from. Therefore, the example of figurative language, and figurative language means the use of symbolism and metaphors. Really good use of language by the candidate here. Works well because it clearly communicates the frustration set by the writer whose autism limits his freedom to express himself. And if you're saying it clearly communicates it, it's very clear that you enjoyed the use of metaphor in the passage. And if you want to write down, this enhanced my enjoyment of the passage, you can. I don't think you need to. So there you go. That's for all of those 0 people who are watching this video. But I think it's really important that you understand that you're going to be asked to comment on a writer's use of language somewhere in your junior cycle exam. You're definitely going to be asked after your Leaving Cert, and these are the type of things that you need to be aware of when you're writing your responses. So for anybody who managed to hang on there, give us one of those if you thought that was any use, and I hope you found it useful.